Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12 Weekend, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, an article published on the front page of the New York Times Friday issue has prompted a response from the Minister of Immigration and Foreign Affairs. This as a former Minister of Immigration weighs in on the new changes. Police investigating another homicide in the Family Islands. A man dies after a fiery car crash last night, plus a newly formed Junkanoo group rushes for cause. I'm Paige McCartney. We've got those stories and more straight ahead on MB12 Weekend. Welcome once again to MB12. Minister of Immigration and Foreign Affairs Fred Mitchell is firing back following a New York Times front page article on the country's controversial new immigration policy. In a statement, Mitchell called parts of the article exaggerated. He said he found it necessary to respond to misinformation about government's administrative measures to strengthen its immigration laws and protect against fraud. Dana Smith has more.
The New York Times article is the latest in the ongoing controversy over the Bahamas' new immigration policy. The article points to the immigration raids, the number of Haitian repatriations, and the international criticism the policy has attracted. But Mitchell said the article is filled with inaccuracies and tendentious material that he feels is based in part on exaggerated and unfounded accusations by civic activists.
The article appeared in the New York Times under the headline "Immigration Rules in Bahamas Sweep of Haitians" and was accompanied by a photo of two young, presumably Haitian boys, with a caption reading, "Born in the Bahamas, but seen as foreigners." The front page article noted the Bahamas immigration policy has sparked international controversy, with human rights groups claiming the policy has unfairly targeted those of Haitian descent. Both the immigration minister and local activist Fred Smith, QC, were interviewed for the article. Smith is quoted as saying government's new immigration policies are a trick, while Mitchell is quoted as saying the country had situations where 100 people were showing up every day. He said the situation was unsustainable and had spiraled out of control. The New York Times article said the immigration policy echoes similar stances around the region that have overwhelmingly affected Haitians. It pointed to measures taken by the Turks and Caicos Islands, Canada, and the Dominican Republic. But Mitchell says bringing the issue of the Dominican Republic appears calculated to poison the well. He said, "What is happening with immigration in the Bahamas is not the same as what is happening in the Dominican Republic. That is an inconvenient truth, but the truth nonetheless. No one's right to citizenship is being taken away ex post facto in the Bahamas." The article also took note of the stepped-up immigration raids and said immigration agents knocked down doors and took children. It referenced widely circulated photographs of children being led by immigration officials. But Mitchell said there is no evidence to support the article's claim, which he dubbed untrue. He said this assertion appears based on a false portrayal in a video circulated on social media that has been widely discredited because it only tells half the story. He said this was pointed out to the writer of the article. The article also referenced the woman who gave birth inside the detention center. But Mitchell said the article only tells half the story, and the full story discredits those who pervade that story because it becomes clear that often events are staged to provoke a particular response. Victimhood, Mitchell said, is often a practiced art. The article also noted the immigration policy stipulations that everyone must hold a passport and non-Bahamian students must have a student permit or residency stamp. It was announced last week students will need the permits when schools open in 2015. It costs $25 for the annual permit with a processing fee of $100. The article described this latest policy as government going a step further. Responding to this, Mitchell said the permit requirement is not a new idea, and all countries require non-nationals to secure a visa or the equivalent as evidence of permission to live and study in their respective countries. Mitchell said in his statement, all the Bahamas asks is for international press not to accept and parrot uncritically what it is told, and asserted the stories told are often exaggerated, outright false, and many times self-serving. Mitchell added, the government of the Bahamas respects the prevalence of the rule of law. It is not the policy of the government to violate the rights of any individual, and at all times, this country will act in a manner consistent with its international obligations towards children and the stateless. Mitchell said further, we make no apology, however, for enforcing the laws and protecting the Bahamas borders in the national interest and in the interests of the Bahamian people. Reporting for NB12 Weekend, I'm Dana Smith.
Well, DNA leader and former Minister of State for Immigration Branville McCartney also weighing in on the new immigration policy for school children. He said he supports the initiative, which is something he worked towards when he held the post. However, McCartney said there needs to be a greater efficiency at the department to ensure students can get their permits in a timely fashion.
I think it's good to see that the government is moving in that direction regarding the student permit. It is not something entirely new. That is something that was discussed when I was there, unfortunately not implemented. I understand it's going to come into effect in September. My only concern there would be whether or not the time period allowed for persons getting the necessary permit is sufficient, bearing in mind how long it takes just to get renewal in this country, how long it takes to get any type of response from immigration today. It seems that some of the most simple matters take forever just to get some type of determination.
McCartney said the policy is something that any good government should have done a long time ago. He said getting illegal migration under control will only save government money in the end.
Illegal immigration has cost the country a tremendous amount of money. For the most part, persons look at just the repatriation, i.e. it costs about, I think, about $2 million, so thereabouts a year for repatriation, where persons are sent back. That's the airline tickets. But of course we don't look at the detention center, the food, the electricity, the maintenance, the upkeep. Also the issue of social services, healthcare, crime, as well as education. All of these things cost us money. It costs the Bahamian people money for those who are here illegally benefiting from healthcare, social services, education, and the like.
In other news, officers from the Central Detective Unit traveled to Exuma today to investigate a homicide on that island. Police say a woman was found dead in Georgetown, Exuma. This is the second homicide in 2 days and the 11th for the year. And police from the traffic department are investigating a traffic accident last night that has left 1 man dead and 3 others injured.
Shortly after 11 p.m. last evening, we received a report of a traffic accident that occurred on the Coral Harbor and the Carmichael Road roundabout, where a vehicle would have collided with a tree. On arrival at the scene, we met the vehicle engulfed in flames. Members from the Royal Bahamas Police Force who were commuting on the Coral Harbor corridor at the time would have noticed the car would have passed them at a high rate of speed, traveling in a southern direction. That vehicle missed its turn within the roundabout and collided with a palm tree. On the impact, the vehicle burst into flames. The members from the defense force were able to smash the driver's glass and pull 4 occupants from that vehicle that was on fire.
According to reports, shortly after 11 p.m., a 1999 vehicle was traveling eastbound on Coral Harbor Road when the driver lost control of the vehicle and crashed into a large palm tree at the Coral Harbor roundabout. Officer in charge of the Road Traffic Department, Superintendent Craig Stubbs, said the impact caused the car to burst into flames, trapping the male driver and 2 male passengers along with 1 female passenger inside.
The front seat adult male passenger was rendered assisted by the EMS personnel, but he had succumbed to his injuries on scene. The driver was listed in critical this morning. The rest of passengers were treated and discharged from PMH early this morning.
According to police, the 3 passengers were transported to hospital where they remain in serious condition.
Based on the physical evidence at the scene, speed was definitely a factor that caused this accident. Speed and driver losing control of his vehicle.
Also from police tonight, an anti-crime operation conducted in the downtown area resulted in the arrest of 6 Colombian women suspected of prostitution and exotic dancing. Reports are that officers acting on intelligence were led to a nightclub on Elizabeth Avenue where the women were taken into custody for breach of the Immigration Act. The proprietor was also arrested for breach of the Business License Act. Also, during that operation, 6 other people were also arrested for various offenses, including possession of dangerous drugs and outstanding warrants.